and you also need to learn and adapt and change on the fly and be okay with certain things as long as you're slowly making your way towards your ultimate goal, then you're setting yourself up for success.
Hey, welcome back to Coffee with Composers. I'm Joe Chris, and this is our first video episode of the podcast. If you're listening on any of the streaming platforms, we now have this up on YouTube where you can actually see me and the composer interact. This week we're chatting with Kenny Wood. Kenny is a Los Angeles-based composer and arranger who's worked on film, television, video games. Most recently, though, he worked on the score for Dora and the Search for Dorado. Kenny also is an important figure in the composer assistant community where he started a group called Teammates, which we will talk about in this interview, so keep an ear out. Anyway, not much housekeeping this week. Let's just hop right into it.
Hi, I'm Kenny Wood, co-founder of the Teammates Group and composer of Dora and the Search for Dorado.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kenny, for joining us today. So, Dora the Explorer is a long-running cartoon on Nickelodeon. This is a sequel, the second movie, and you composed the music. How did you approach working on an IP that already exists, has a long musical history, but also is very connected to Latin American culture and musical traditions?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thanks. I'm so glad to be here. This is a very cool podcast, and they called it a standalone sequel, and what that really means is it's actually a reboot. So it's under the same roof as Nickelodeon, Paramount, etc. But it's all new cast, all new crew, different director, different writer, and obviously new composer too. So we were kind of starting from scratch with a blank slate, which was exciting. And yes, the Dora verse, if you want to call it that, has been around now 25 years. We're actually celebrating the 25th anniversary, and they're calling it the Great Dora Fiesta. So there have been lots of releases, including this movie. There's also a music album of people who have put together like their inspiration tracks from having been fans of the Dora franchise for so long. And also a brand new season of the animated show composed by my buddy Bobby Villarreal. And he also put out a new album as well. So tons of content if you're into Dora stuff. And we're proud to present this new feature film with a great cast and crew. And it's been awesome to work on.
Awesome. How did you, listening to the soundtrack, you have a lot of Latin influence in the music. How did you go about like researching that and incorporating it into the score while still maintaining like a film score sound?
Yeah, well, great question. So, first and foremost, I'm actually from LA. So, if you want to get in with Latin culture, LA is a great place to be and live. And it starts with me every day. I'll go out to the backyard and my neighbor's playing mariachi music, and I'll head into town, and there's all kinds of Latin influence there too. But I didn't stop there. I actually booked a trip to Peru, which is where the Marquez family, the Dora family, is actually from, and and spent a whole week there and learned the culture and learned the instruments. Met this really cool Inca music historian who works at the Inca Museum down over there, and bought a bunch of instruments from him. Learned how to play them and brought them all back and used those to record the sound. So the sounds you're hearing are actual authentic instruments used not only in the Latino world but also the ancient Inca world too.
That's so awesome. There's a cue, Casa Marquez, actually, that I definitely hear all those Latin instrumentation, but at the same time, there's a really cool, like, modern twist on that, blending both the traditional Latin music as well as modern dance styles. I thought that was just a really cool thing you did.
Oh, thank you. I'm only going to take partial credit because that cue was actually co-written by myself and Evan Duffy, a really really talented composer and producer. So he and I teamed up, and I kind of give him all the credit in the world for giving it that modern pop flavor to it, and I was more of the mapping it out and making sure it hits all the right things and has the right feelings and stuff. So we were passing that one back and forth, and that was a lot of fun to put together.
Awesome, awesome. And when you're working on a project like this that's already an existing IP, What sort of discussions are had behind the scenes versus when you're on a project that's a completely new IP? Like, what sort of differences might you come in creatively for that kind of
Right.
approach?
Yeah, exactly. It's always a discussion that needs to be had because you want to handle this stuff very carefully and you want to make sure you're not doing stuff that would be too far outside the universe. But at the same rate, you also have to push the envelope and try and introduce new flavors and new themes and new struggles and new dramatic things that need to happen in the film. So we were definitely pushing that. Um, and one of our things we wanted to try and exploit in this was, even though it's a traditionally children's-oriented IP, we wanted to make something that adults could enjoy, and make a movie for the grown-ups that spent their childhood with Dora, and now they're fully functioning adults that don't need to be um, how or anything like that. So we were pushing things like jump scares and horror elements and things to try and kind of raise the hairs on your skin with some of these more intense scenes.
It's so awesome. What was the biggest challenge on this film for you creatively?
Oh, the biggest challenge was definitely keeping up with all the feedback coming from different angles, not only the director but production and the network and Nickelodeon and trying to make everyone happy. Also, um, it, despite Dora being a huge IP, this was a relatively small production, so we had our limitations, um, meaning that I didn't have a big giant team. I had a good sized team to work with, but not a huge one. In that I could divide a lot of the work around, so a lot of it was just still on me. I had to answer all the calls and the emails, as well as compose the majority of the cues and be responsible to get them recorded and also record a bunch of things myself because I have all these instruments in the studio as well. So it was just a lot, just never stop, tons of stuff, tons of information, and and also being able to deliver it with a smile and get everyone to feel good about it. That was a challenge, and but fortunately we got through it. And Nickelodeon is a great company to work with. They listen to what I ask them, and we came through with a really cool product, I think.
Awesome. And this being a what was the term you used? Spiritual sequel or reboot? What was the term?
Oh, right. Standalone sequel.
Standalone sequel. So this being a standalone sequel, you were not the composer on the first film.
Right.
How did you get your foot in the door to work on this project?
Oh, the simple way, through the director.
Awesome.
He and I have been working together for, yeah, well over a decade. And this would be our third feature film that we've done. In addition to things like commercials and TV pilots and stuff like that. So whenever he's working on something, I clear my schedule. I make sure I'm available for him. Alberto Belli is the name, by the way, and he's a fantastic director. The kind of director composers dream of, because you get to write the stuff that is the whole reason you wanted to get into film scoring in the first place. So in this movie, we did a lot of nods and homages to John Williams and the Jurassic Park and Indiana Jones style of scores. So if you're listening for that, you can definitely hear those influences.
Yeah, so you worked with this director for, you said 10 years. Let me just
Yeah,
pull up my notes.
we're going on 15 years now.
Wow.
Alberto Belli is the name, and he's done. Dora is our third feature film. And we've also done a bunch of other things like pilots and commercials, viral videos, and it goes way back to 2011 when I worked on his thesis film at USC when we were in school together. So those are the kinds of relationships you always want when you're going to school to study music and film scoring and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a dream come true that he and I both are at a point now where we're making stuff for the masses. And yeah. Yeah, so it's great.
Awesome.
He's a great collaborator, great creative partner, and we're even at the point now where he's open to hearing my comments on script notes and edit things, and that's a rare thing for a composer to be involved with that kind of stuff. But that's the level of trust we have, and it's awesome. It's awesome to have a creative partner like that.
Yeah, it sounds it. How did you go from USC to working with Brian Tyler?
Oh, great question. Well, at one point in time, USC was almost like a pipeline to assisting for Brian Tyler. Now, I was never his actual in-house assistant. I've always been kind of a like a satellite additional writer and arranger kind of person for him. But friends of mine actually did work directly for him, and through them, I got the opportunity to work with him. And it all started with a movie, Triple X3, The Return of Xander Cage. Gosh, what year was that? That was like 2016 or something like that, 2017 maybe. And it was my friend Bob Lidecker, Robert Lidecker, who was working with Brian at the time. And Bob and I were USC classmates, so we got along really well, and when he was working for Brian, he had spent the years and paid the dues and got an opportunity to co-score that movie with him, and he brought me on as an additional person, so I just punched in a few cues there and helped out wherever I could, and then from there, I just kind of got absorbed into Brian's arranging and writing team, and I've been doing movies with him ever since.
That's awesome. One thing I think a lot of early career composers don't think about is you don't need to be the like lead composer on every project in order to have a successful career. And that's something I really appreciate about your career. You've done a lot of music arranging and additional music. Can you kind
Yeah.
of talk about that side of the industry a bit? Like how you got into that as well? I mean, sorry, like what's the difference between that and like lead composing and like the different thought processes on creating themes versus arranging them?
Yeah, oh, it's a great discussion. So definitely worthwhile to have it. So yeah, I just kind of outlined how I got into doing that. I was also the assistant for Hector Pereira, so working with him, I got the same kinds of opportunities. So and these are two legendary, successful composers. So I was very fortunate to be on board with them and learn the ropes and see a lot of the the bigger challenges that not a lot of people get to see. So that was really great to be around and work my way through them. So here's what I can offer for anyone who is coming up through the ranks of composing and trying to achieve a similar thing. If you're hanging around a lot of musicians and composers and you're like really on the music side, you can find your way to get into an arranging role or additional music role, because that's the network that you're exposing yourself to. If you wanted to be the main composer and headline the marquees on all that stuff, you really got to be hanging with the filmmakers. So for me, that's Alberto, um, and those are really the most surefire opportunities I get in that world, because he and I have such a good relationship. So, and even at my age, I'm still working on getting more relationships with production people and directors and producers and things like that, so that my resume on that end can expand. But it's hard to complain. I've had a lot of really great opportunities on both sides, and tons of great stories. I'm happy to share.
What does networking and meeting production people look like at your stage in the career? You're obviously not hanging around like college campuses working on student films. At least that's not as much, I hope, anymore. But like, what does it look like at, I guess, your higher level?
Right, definitely not as much, although it's not a bad idea, because you never know where the next like Ryan Coogler might come
Hmm.
from. He was doing the movie that really propelled him to fame was Fruitvale Station, which was only like a year or two after he like it's you're never too old or too whatever to be to at least be dropping some business cards in a in a film school mailbox area, because that's actually how I got a connection at some point, long ago. So whatever the digital equivalent of that is right now is probably not a bad idea to do. But what networking looks like for me right now is just going to events, going to those rooftop parties where that you see you know presented by PR companies and things, and um, also film festivals and screenings. And you also got to make sure you make the most of your time when you're on a project. You're working closely with a director and a producer and an editor, and those are relationships you definitely want to build, but you also want to reach out and expand into, like, the assistant directors and the assistant editors and the people who are on the production company side. So the music supervisor and the executive producers and things like that. And you try to make yourself a household name within their world, and you follow up with them after the project's done. You congratulate them, and you try to, you meet for coffee and stuff. So I get a lot of DMs and emails of people asking to meet me up and things like that. And like you keep doing that, like even if you don't quite click with it right away, you gotta keep persisting in a tactful way, and make sure that you're coming off as someone who's warm and welcoming. And you take those same skills and you bring it to a different set of people when you're at the the experience level that I'm currently at. And I will never admit that I'm satisfied with where I am. I'm always expanding and trying to get the next best thing and next greatest thing, and you keep going from there. You stay hungry.
Awesome, awesome. Going back to the arranging thing, I want to ask you like what the workflow is like for you on when you're arranging a project. I know your DAW history where you started in DP and eventually moved to Logic, then Cubase, and
Hmm.
now you're fully
Yeah.
in Pro Tools because I believe Brian Tyler is in Pro Tools fully.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like from like a pipeline perspective, like what is a standard project from like you just started to release as an arranger versus being a composer?
Yeah, great question. So the experience that I have is one where, like, we get involved for, as soon as the post-production schedule begins, but there's not a lot of transparency to it. Like we're mostly engaging with one person, which might be the music editor or the composer, him or herself, and you're just getting very tunnel vision instructions from them, like, okay, this is the cue we're going to give you, and here's the briefing for it. They might include a couple of notes that were said in the meeting of like what the production company wants out of that cue, but mostly it's like, here's what the composer feels you need to do, and then you just go do it. So I'll put together a pass and send it on in, and then I'll get a bunch of notes from that same contact person, and you just kind of fine tune it from there. And then once it's past that person, then it gets sent to, say, Brian, or the next level up person, and the person might have notes on it. So you just kind of keep polishing it, and then it gets to a point where, okay, now they can present it to the production company, and the production company will have their notes maybe. And you just you recycle that, and by the end of that queue's life, you might be up to version 12 or something, which is not too uncommon. But fortunately, I'm at the point now where I can mostly get probably 96-97% of what they're asking for in the first pass, and then we're just making small tweaks from there. And then, of course, um, new picture comes in, and you gotta take that and conform it, and you might be subject to more notes depending on how that conform process went. But it's all part of it, and hopefully you like that process enough to where every time you're asked to do a new iteration, you feel chance to make the cue better in some way. So I'll never dismiss notes. I'll just take them as they come, and try to make the thing as best as I can on every time I open it.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
With just changing gears a bit, you worked on a book for assistants in the
Yep.
Hollywood system, and you run a Facebook group and a Discord. I've actually read your book. I'm part of both your groups. That's how we met. How did that whole thing get started for you?
Oh, through nothing more complicated than a pretty bad assistant life as I was coming up through the ranks as an assistant. And it's not to say that every part of it is bad, but I experienced some stuff where I knew that this is not okay. And when I'm in that position, having a team of my own, I just never want them to have to go through that. So the people that I was with also had similar experiences, the other assistants, and them and me teamed up and put our thoughts together, and it didn't start as a book. It started as discussions on Facebook, like
Hmm.
in other forums and groups, and it started to like have a little gravity to it. So people were chiming in and say, we need to get some guidelines going, and who's going to do all this and stuff. And then there was this big time Hollywood agent who was like, Kenny Wood just said he's going to put this list of guidelines together. So let's cheer him on, and give him some time to come back with whatever, and and let's see what he comes up with. So then I was like, oh, I guess I'm doing this now. And sure enough, I took that as not just a challenge, but kind of like a calling, if you will. Like, okay, this is my opportunity. This is my chance to have an impact and make a change for the better. And I just went with it. I said, okay, let's go above and beyond and put something really significant out there, and that's exactly what we did. So 6 weeks passed by, and we were just racing against the clock, and we cobbled together this 74-page manual on how to do things, or how at least how we thought you should do things. And it caught fire. It was amazing. Like, everyone had a great response to it, and it kind of became this new standard of how to deal with assistants when one is hiring, or if teams that are already established and stuff. And it really kind of disrupted all the crazy bad stuff that was going on. Now, did it fully eliminate all that stuff? No. But it certainly, uh, got people to watch out a little bit more. COVID happened very soon after that. So that was also like another way to kind of slow down all the other bad stuff that was happening. No, unfortunately, like the industry took a dip there too. So like a lot less hires were being made, and we're still kind of in that whatever you want to call it, that valley, I guess. But hopefully in the next year or two, we'll see things start to pick up, and more hires will be made. And what I think is great now is the teammates group has made it so anyone hiring a new assistant are taking these recommendations into consideration very seriously. So I think we've had a new generation of much happier and safer assistant jobs, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, no, it was a really great book. I read it at the start of my career. It helped me a lot when I was assisting. So first off, thank you. And the Discord
Awesome.
community, I find I get so much use out of it every single day. There's just so much, one, great people in there, always happy to help lend a hand, and two, so much knowledge is just being shared freely back and forth, which I think is something that doesn't happen much on the internet anymore. It's really nice to see that.
Yeah. Well, it's a crazy thing. Like, so we've got this, huge team of admins. I think there's 13 of us or 14 of us, maybe. Um, and the greatest thing about teammates is that the culture is so good, and the community is so good and rich, and where we spend our just making sure that there's affect that culture.
Mm,
And as a result, you get all these people who are happy to share their experiences, happy to share their knowledge. And it doesn't matter if, like, someone who is brand new to this is asking a question that has already been asked 100 times. Everyone's eager to pounce on it and jump in and answer it, to their, with their experience and their knowledge, and everyone's so open to sharing, and it's just really great. And that's something that, like, is not really done through anything other than people's, generosity and just goodwill, and their desire to contribute to a culture that is, taking care of everyone.
absolutely. The original Assisting the Composer book came out in around 2019, right?
Right.
Would you ever consider updating it to more modern day practices? I know since then a lot of composers have gone towards like remote assisting, like hiring assistants remotely versus in the studio, and practices sort of changed in that sense. But the core idea is still the same, but these little sections, would you ever consider updating?
Yes, we have, and we actually have an outline for a new book. Um, but we're kind of waiting for the industry to stabilize a little bit
Mm.
more, because we might say, okay, this is how you should do it, but then some kind of core practice is going to change, I think, in the next couple of years here. So once, I think, once we have a little more predictability in our little niche of things, then I think we'll actually aggressively go forward and fill out all the spaces we have in this new book that we have outlined. But yes, the plans are there, and it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when we can all sink our teeth into it.
Awesome, awesome. And one of my last questions, I know you have a daughter and a family. What's it like balancing a composing career while also being a family person? Someone in their late 20s right now, like what's the life looking like?
It is just crazy bananas, and that's all I can really say about it. It's going to be crazy. Families are great, and my little girl is amazing, and she surprises me and delights me every day with all kinds of awesome stuff. But yeah, there's no such thing as like a comfortable way of balancing all that. You just have to have really good communication with you and your partner, and when if that's established and you guys know when to lean on one person more versus the other, and be cool with it, then raising the child will really go great from there. I give millions and billions of credits to my wife for being able to allow me um, to be chasing this dream that I've been doing for years and years and years. And the good news is, like, we feel like every day I'm getting just a little bit closer to achieving what our ultimate goal is. And so that gives her the confidence um, to be able to take these extended single mom days, if you want to call them that, and just as well, like when she's in a position where she can do something, then I do the single dad thing for a little while. And it's sort of a funny way we call it that, but that's the reality. You got to be able to put all the weight on your own shoulders at various times, and when your partner's willing to do the same for you, you got to maximize whatever opportunities that you're trying to handle at that moment too. So it's nonstop work. You're gonna lose a lot of sleep, but it's worth it. I think the payoff in terms of what you can do when you're really focused on advancing your career, and also what your children give you in return when you're putting enough investment into them is next to none. That's awesome.
That's really great. Thank you. My last big question, I guess, is do you have any last advice for upcoming composers trying to break into the industry, either at the very start of their career or from getting to the next level of their career?
I mean, I get asked this all the time. every time. Like it really matters what's going on in the world, and how you can take advantage of what's hot, and what are the new and greatest ways to think about things. I've always been told, like, if you want to have sustained success in this kind of field, you got to be the flavor of the month every month, and just constantly put energy into things. And um, it, one thing that has served me really well is I try my best not to make it about me all the time. I always try to make things about, what can I contribute or add to make the people interfacing, what can I do to make their lives better, to make their day better, or make their project better. And it's always been about that. We're in a service industry, which you'll hear a lot of the time. And it's what can you do to make things better or to solve a problem. So if you're thinking about that at all times, then you have the DNA to be a success in this industry. And remember that it's a marathon, and it's not just a marathon, it's like a super marathon. Things that you might be planning, like, okay, in the next 10 years or in the next 5 years, here's where I see myself. You got to be okay with that taking 15 years maybe. So you also need to learn and adapt and change on the fly, and be okay with certain things, as long as you're slowly making your way towards your ultimate goal. Then you're setting yourself up for success. And you'll be doing a lot of sidestepping and roundabout ways of doing things, but as long as you kind of feel that you're slowly getting there, you're doing the right thing.
Wonderful. That is so useful, so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dora, the Search for Dorado is now out on Paramount Plus.
Mhm.
And do you have any other upcoming projects, or where can people find you who are interested in following your career?
Right. Well, you can always find me at Kennywood Music on all the platforms, and we'll see how this goes. If Paramount Plus likes what we did, then there's a non-zero chance that another Dora movie will come out, and this one will actually be with the same crew. So it'll be Alberto, and it'll be me and all the other same gang. And um, I did hear a little bit of possible storylines for another thing, and they're really cool. So if anyone was an appreciator of this last one that just came out, then there's some exciting stuff in store. Hopefully we'll get it greenlit and on underway for those who want to see that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time, Kenny. This has been very insightful.
Oh, my pleasure. This was fun, Joe. Thank you.
Of course, of course.
So yeah, that was our interview with Kenny Wood. Thank you so much for listening to Coffee with Composers. If you know a composer who you think would be great on this show, please reach out. If you're listening again, please check out the YouTube channel. We're going to be posting a lot more than just this podcast up on the YouTube. That is just at Joe_Chris_. Same as my Instagram, same as all my socials. I hope to hear back from you guys next week, or I hope you guys hear back from me next week, and keep listening.